This video is made possible by Brilliant. You'll learn more about Brilliant later in today's video, but if you would like to learn more about them right now, go to brilliant.org/brainfood. You'll also find a link in the description below. Back in the halcyon days of the 1980s, when all people had to worry about was total annihilation via widespread nuclear war, an American called Dennis Hope made international news when he revealed that after exploiting a loophole in the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, he had become the sole owner of the nearest celestial neighbor, the Moon. Since then, Hope has made a small fortune selling off pieces of the satellite's surface. While the media has mostly painted Hope as a harmless eccentric, if you study his story a little more closely, as we're wont to do, you'll see that Hope is actually a masterful entrepreneur, and almost every aspect of his story is a carefully crafted falsehood or half-truth that nonetheless has seen the man himself earn millions selling nothing more than pieces of paper. So, how did he pull this off? Well, the story goes that in 1980, Mr. Hope was a down-on-his-luck unemployed shoe salesman, reeling from a divorce and looking for a way to make ends meet. After learning that there was a great deal of money to be made buying and selling property, he states, "I looked out the window, saw the moon, and thought, hey, there's a load of property." Hope ran to his local library. For those unfamiliar, it's a sort of place where they used to store the partial contents of the future internet on the bodies of deceased trees to research who, if anyone, owns the Earth satellite. In that house of plant death, he discovered that according to the 1967 Outer Space Treaty signed by all spacefaring nations at the time, as well as over 100 others, no country can claim sovereignty over any such celestial body. Hope's interpretation of this was that while the treaty forbade countries and governments from staking a claim to the moon, it said nothing about an individual doing so. Towards this end, he filed a claim for ownership of the moon with, to quote him, his local US governmental office for claim registries. Supposedly, after some pushing and prodding, a supervisor at the office signed off on his claim, which made him the sole owner of the moon. As a courtesy, Hope then wrote a letter to the United Nations and the Russian government telling them about the claim he was granted by the US government and asking if they wished to challenge it. After no one responded, he began selling off plots of land on the moon for about $20 an acre, or slightly more if you wished also to purchase the mineral rights for your particular lunar plot. Incidentally, for more terrestrial rules on this, you can see our video. If you own land, how far above and below it do you own? Since then, Hope has claimed to have sold 611 million acres of land on the moon, 325 million acres on Mars, and a combined 125 million acres on Venus, Io, one of Jupiter's moons, and Mercury, to approximately 6 million property owners, including, according to him, celebrities like Tom Hanks, George Lucas, and even former presidents Carter, Bush Jr., and Reagan. He also claims that the Hilton and Marriott hotel chains have bought extensive properties from him, along with, to quote him, 1,800 major corporations. Beyond selling property on the various celestial bodies, he also claims to be the de facto ruler of the Galactic Government, which he also states currently has diplomacy with 30 governments on this planet. We can only assume by diplomacy that at some point he sent an email off that some clerk actually replied to. Whatever the case, as for the United States, Hope states on his Lunar Embassy website that we at the Lunar Embassy are pleased that our work since November of 1980 is finally starting to be recognized by the United States of America government as being valid. This is a huge step in the official recognition by the USA. As to what this huge step in the official recognition of his claim of ownership of the moon and other such celestial objects was, beyond we're sure the IRS being happy to collect taxes from him, the preceding paragraph on the website indicates that this acknowledgement came in the form of Hope being, to quote, named co-chairman of the Republican Congressional Business Advisory Council. He has also been given the National Republican Leadership Award, and more recently, he has been issued the highest honor the National Republican Congressional Committee has, the prestigious Republican Gold Medal. We'll leave it to you to decide just how much official recognition by the USA this really is. Moving swiftly on, his galactic government is technically the richest in the solar system. As he states, we have a currency for our government. We're the only government that has any backing for its currency whatsoever, which are the helium-3 reserves on the surface of the moon. We have $6 quadrillion worth of helium reserves in our treasury right now. This all brings us around to how much, if any, of Hope's story is actually true and whether or not he has any genuine legal claim to the moon. To begin with, it's often reported as fact that Hope discovered a loophole in the 1967 Outer Space Treaty that allowed him as an individual to claim ownership over the moon. However, if you actually read the treaty, it's kind of what we do here, you'll find that it very clearly in Article 6 states, "The activities of non-governmental entities in outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, shall require authorization and continuing supervision by the appropriate state party to the treaty." As Hope has never received authorization by any state party to the treaty for activities on the moon, including ownership, it's generally agreed by space lawyers that Hope is full of space dung and that the deeds he sells are nothing more than a novelty item. And if you think we're making up the whole space lawyers bit, this is actually yet another thing that your high school guidance counselor failed to mention to you, despite the fact that the International Institute of Space Law was formed all the way back in 1960 and currently has members in nearly 50 countries. Alright, but let's go back to Hope. Now, at this point you might be thinking, but didn't Hope get such an authorization by a state party when the US Governmental Office for Claim Registries approved his claim? Well, another problem with his origin story is that there is no such government office of the United States federal government he could have gone to that deals with registering individual claims to property like this. And further, no local state office has the power to officially grant someone the rights to land outside of their jurisdiction either, which the moon and various planets most definitely are. This hasn't stopped Hope claiming that a representative of such an office accepted his claim for some reason. Unfortunately, the official documentation of the processing of his claim was supposedly misplaced, and for whatever reason, he can't seem to get an official copy of it from any government office. Instead, he can only provide a copy that he made of it. This is a copy, mind you, that is filled with numerous spelling and grammatical errors, and that apparently refers to Hope as the head cheese. In any event, it should also be noted that the lunar deeds that Hope sells contain a disclaimer clearly and prominently identifying it as a novelty gift. Nevertheless, Hope himself vehemently insists that the deeds are real. He explains on his website that the term novelty is only used to discourage frivolous lawsuits. He also hilariously points out that, well, if you look under the true definition of novelty as being something that is unique, having the quality of being novel, a small mass-produced item, we fit exactly that. He doubles down on the authenticity here by noting the inclusion of novelty does not diminish the value of the property that you purchase in any way, as every deed is recorded and registered in the Lunar Embassy's registration database, and every owner's information is listed with that registration. You own this property. He further states that 17% of people buy the product as a novelty item, but we also know that 42% of people register the property in the name of a trust they've set up, meaning they take it more seriously. And of course, we also know that the major corporations who own land have a specific intent for it. We'll spare you more such claims, but suffice it is to say that if you look over the company's website, they are pretty adamant that what they are selling is actual rights to property on the moon, and helpfully even have a whole section on one of their web pages dedicated to helping people spot fraud, because if one thing is clear above all others, Hope definitely has a great deadpan sense of humor. All that aside, despite Hope's aforementioned claims that only 17% of buyers think it's a novelty item, we feel pretty confident that most people buying these deeds know full well it's all just a fun gag gift, which brings us to the big question. Has Hope actually achieved the American dream of earning $1 million off his little business venture? Well, as noted, Hope claims that he sold 611 million acres of land on the moon, 325 million acres of land on Mars, and a combined 125 million acres on Venus, Io, and Mercury. Given the prices he's selling at, $20 and up per acre, and that the total here is over 1 billion acres sold, this means Hope is officially one of the richest people in the world, even if we assume he offers steep discounts for bulk buys, which, for what it's worth, on his website he currently does not seem to offer. Speaking of his obscene wealth, Hope claims that in 2011 an organization approached him and offered to buy the entire North Pole of the moon for a whopping $50 million, but he turned down their offer. His reason? We want to make sure people have what is needed for living at an inexpensive price. We're going to be honest here and say we're not entirely sure what he was trying to say there. Whatever the case, Hope notes that his current net worth is well over $100 trillion in land alone, owing to his ownership of over 7 trillion acres of extraterrestrial properties. Beyond the land, Hope of course claims to own exclusive mineral rights to, by his estimate, $6 quadrillion of helium-3 on the moon alone. This isn't mentioning the countless deposits of minerals and resources on the other celestial bodies that he claims to own, such as the rich methane deposits hidden inside Uranus. Full disclosure here, the co-author of this script, Carl Swalwood of Fact Fiend fame, chose this topic solely so that he could make that Uranus joke. More on the whole methane-Uranus thing in a bonus fact later. But going back to Hope, we're just saying the IRS might want to look into his taxes to make sure that he's properly paying on everything, as we're pretty sure we just figured out how to solve the United States' national debt problem. You're welcome. All joking aside, how much has Hope actually made from all of this? Well, really, only Hope and the IRS know. But given the fact that Hope seemingly has had no other job since 1995, we're guessing he's at least done reasonably well, and certainly given it would take only about $26,000 a year on average to crest the $1 million mark in the near 4 decades he's been doing this, he has easily eclipsed the classic American dream of making $1 million off little more than elbow grease and an idea, or in his case some high-quality paper, printer ink, and sufficient postage. And speaking of brilliant business people, Brilliant ad transitions to today's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is an online learning platform that might make you brilliant, not a guarantee. And I want to tell you about Brilliant just before we get into some bonus facts today. You've heard me talk about Brilliant before. They're a learning platform that focuses on active learning. This is where you're given a short bit of information on a scientific concept, then you're asked to solve a problem based on that information. It's an incredibly effective way to learn. What's so great about Brilliant over traditional learning is that you can take it slow. And I know this sounds a bit counterintuitive because we live in a world where everything's like get it done now as quickly as possible. But really with Brilliant, you can just take a few minutes every day to learn something small, and then as the days and the weeks and the months roll by, faster than you'd imagine, you'll have built up an incredible knowledge base, all while feeling as if you weren't really even trying. Brilliant has full courses where you can go through and learn the basics and then move on to master more intermediate or advanced things, or you can take daily challenges where you solve a small problem every single day. This sort of short daily practice can lead you from curiosity to mastery in far less time than you might think. So go to brilliant.org/brainfood and finish your day a little smarter. The first 200 of you to do that will get 20% off your annual subscription, and you'll be able to view all of the previous daily challenges in the archives. And let's get into those bonus facts. Hope was not the first to claim to own the moon, nor the last. There is one man who has the strongest claim of all, computer game designer Richard Allen Garriott de Caillou. Why? He is the only individual to legally own something that is currently on the moon. In 1993, he purchased the Lunokhod 2 and the Luna 21 lander for $68,500 at auction. As he notes, "I purchased Lunokhod from the Russians. I am now the world's only private owner of an object on a foreign celestial body. Though there are international treaties that say no government shall lay claim to geography off planet Earth, I am not a government. Summarily, I claim the moon in the name of Lord British." Funny enough, beyond being the son of an astronaut, he's also the only person who claims to own the moon to have actually been to space. He did so via paying $30 million to visit the International Space Station in October of 2008, spending 12 days there. As another fun fact about Garriott, he is generally credited as being the man to coin the term massively multiplayer online role-playing game, MMORPG. And now for another bonus fact. Going back to the methane in Uranus, it turns out that contrary to popular belief, methane in any measurable amount in most people's flat Earths is not terribly common, with only about 1/3 of humans having measurably significant amounts of it in their farts. Even then, in one small study, looking at only 10 people's farts and experimenting around a bit with their diets during the study, it was found that those that did have measurable amounts of methane only produced it when fed significant amounts of fiber. The fiber-free version of their farts was almost wholly made up of nitrogen for all 10 subjects. With the fiber version, the average fart only contained about 3.6% methane. The bulk of these individuals' flatus was made up of hydrogen, 51%, and nitrogen, 30%. Though at least in part it has to do with what microbes call one's intestines home. Scientists have identified a few factors in predicting if a person is a methane producer, and one of the most important of these appears to be where you live, although it's not clear if genetics plays a role as well in some way. For example, while 77% of Nigerians and 87% of South Africans produce methane, only 34% of Norwegians and 35% of those who live in and around Minneapolis do so. In addition, adult women are more likely to produce measurable amounts of methane in their farts, and young children less so. Finally, if both your parents produce methane, then there is a greater likelihood that you will too, with one study indicating a chance as high as 95% that the spawn of two methane producers will also produce methane in their farts. More than just inconvenient, recent studies have shown a correlation between methane production and several gastrointestinal diseases, including diverticulosis, inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome, constipation, and colon cancer. However, there is no definitive answer as to why to date. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below and don't forget to subscribe. Also, support this show by supporting our sponsor Brilliant. Just go to brilliant.org/brainfood. There's also a link below. And thank you for watching.